All right, so our last presenter today is familiar to those of you who have been coming to these meetings for a while. This is John Feland from Argus Insights. John's company is a market research company. It uses crowdsourcing data from social networks and other sites to understand in real time what consumers are talking about and how they like. You have new slides?
No, haven't done that to you.
Then you can use it right here. What consumers are talking about, how much they're talking about, and how they like what they're talking about. And John is going to share some brand new analysis that he's done related to Internet of Things devices that consumers are using, including the consumer surveillance cameras that have come up a number of times today. Welcome, John.
Thank you. All right, so I'm lossing between you and cocktails. And my job is to inform as well as hopefully maybe entertain a little bit along the way. What we've been doing, Prism Skylabs does an amazing job of understanding what people do in stores. We look at what they say about that experience and then help our clients understand where that means. And we do this in a way that is sort of a little bit big brothery, but more like a little sistery. We analyze the Internet of Humans. I'm going to talk about IoT, but from the standpoint of what people are saying about what it is that they're doing. We collect data from multiple different sources that Jeff talked about, ratings and reviews, blogs, Twitter, customer data, et cetera. Bring that into our platform, analyze it in a kind of a big data way, report out on those actions, and then help our customers do what's right. We've used that data to embarrass Wall Street's estimates of iPhone sales almost every quarter for the past 3 years. And we cover multiple different categories. Today I'm going to dig into, you've heard me talk about smartphones in the past. That's so 2014. We're looking into next year and focus a lot more on home automation and IoT. We're actually helping out the Alliance taking our collection and focused on actually the B2B side of embedded vision. And you'll hear about that in a future member meeting. Now, what does this mean for us? This was actually embedded vision. This is our great hope, right? 4 cameras on the front staring at people. We all thought the Fire Phone was going to be the time that embedded vision took off and captured the hearts and minds of users and drove silicon sales through the roof. All right, think about what Prism Skylabs would do if this actually penetrated throughout the entire world. The amount of data you could push out to people based on not only could you see where they're in the store, but you could tell what their facial. So imagine if we could match Prism Skylabs with GE facial recognition, our data, and we have Minority Report, all done. Consumers are a little concerned. Anyway, so the Fire Phone came out on the 25th. Does anyone have one? We'll get to that. We found out a month later you're one of the few that do, and thank you for that. I did this part of the talk at a presentation in Texas, and the guy who developed the facial recognition was in the audience. He said he kept the phone for sentimental reasons. 3 days after launch, we saw a trajectory that tells us that failure was coming. The bubbles across the size of bubbles, the volume of people talking about what they love and what they hate about an experience. And the Y direction, as you can imagine, is some notion of performance for consumers. Those 3 red bubbles are the 3 days of Fire Phone consumers going, oh my goodness, no. And so after 3 days, we knew based on what people were talking about what was working or not. And then when they dropped the price, September 8th, in anticipation of the new iPhones coming out, it dropped even further. So even almost free, this phone wasn't worth it to people. Partly because of AT&T networks, there's a lot of stories around that. We actually saw in the early days of the iPhone, when it launched from being on AT&T to Verizon, the perceptions of consumers jumped by 25%. Because for those of you who live in the Bay Area in the old AT&T days, that meant that your smartphone could actually make phone calls. All right, so what's happening within cameras? We have a bunch of different things happening. There's been this huge... Security cameras have been around for a long time. Some of you may be familiar with the old X10, the website that would give you 12 cameras for a penny if you bought their controller and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is the early days when we were all kind of geeking away and you could get a basic stamp and have it put out the X10 code to control everything. Now it's drop cam. It's almost like the Ron Popeil of home security. Set it and forget it. How are they doing? Google bought them. They think they're doing pretty well. So again, remember the bubbles we saw with the Fire Phone? These are the bubbles that we see in the marketplace for security cameras. And all these slides will be available actually on the Alliance website afterwards. And so, and if you want the raw data, come talk to me. I'll just give you the raw stuff. That's what we do. But you can see that drop cam is that orange bubble at the top. Not the most talked about, but one of the most loved. The big red bubble down in the middle there, kind of at the delight scores of 25%. And by the way, the delight scores here are not measured using sentiment. This is taking the consumer star ratings. This is not us going, okay, awesome versus totally awesome. Yeah, that's better. This is actually taking the ratings, the numerical ratings that the consumers give, tuning it, filtering it, picking out the ones that are fake, all that kind of stuff. And that's what we end up with. D-Link is the big dog in this market today. And they're driving people nuts, which has allowed for other companies to come in with alternatives to that. But the surprising part is that Belkin's down low. They're working really, really hard. And then these little tiny gray dots here at the bottom, you've got to have it. It's few people talk about it, and when they do, it's not for the right reasons. We tend to put those kind of products in a category we call, why did you bother launching this on the market? They have some opportunities, so if anyone's looking for someone to help, that's definitely a brand to look at. When we just look at the volume of conversation, again, this type of information ends up being leading where the market's going. What you see is a ramp of interest and engagement coming into the fall. This was the summer of installing your very own camera. And you can see that D-Link had a huge amount of interest. Foss cam was coming up, and drop cams kind of petered along in there in the middle. Then it drops. We all went back to school, got busy. No reason for cameras. It's coming back. Black Friday was good for a lot of people. It's interesting to see where the market's going. But you also, from a mind share standpoint, can see where the brands sit. Lowe's Iris is a little salmon line down there at the bottom, not grabbing much attention. The whole Lowe's Iris line is actually having trouble in home automation. When we look at it from the overall mind share percentage, the overall market, because assuming we don't have every review, but we have most of the customer conversations happening in this space today, and what you see is D-Link is losing. They're losing mind share to the other brands who offer a better experience, better functionality. We're going to dig into the details as to why that's the case, what's driving that. But you can see the little, kind of tealy line at the top, Art Sauce Simple Cam. Jeff has one. So it was easier to install than the drop cam, if I remember correctly. Remember talking about that couple? And so we see this kind of shift in the marketplace. Foss cam's been the engine that's been growing also. But the interesting part is how consistent drop cam has been. Essentially, from a mind share standpoint, if you look at all the chatter about the Google purchase and working with Nest, and now my drop cam works with my Nest thermostat, which works with my John Deere lawnmower, which works with my iPhone, you would think that they'd be the market leader. But we're not seeing that's not necessarily the case today. But people are starting to learn from what they're doing and roll out even easier to use or simpler kind of things to set up. So let's dig into it. One of the things we do is we go through and look at within all this data, all these conversations, what are they talking about? Because unlike surveys in which you get the answer to the questions that you ask, be careful, we measure what's top of mind for consumers. And from that, within the conversations, of course, this is mostly about cameras, but how do people talk about it when they talk about these devices from a positive, negative, and neutral standpoint? And again, for those that are colorblind, this side is negative. The percentage is the volume of the reviews that actually mention topics. That the kind of teal piece is the positive, and then the neutral. So these will not add up to 100% in any of these charts that you're going to see. It's a way to kind of see where they match overall. You can see that SimpliSafe right now, it's one of the highest rated devices in the marketplace. Some of the major brands, even drop cam, people aren't always happy with the camera performance. This is people talking about they love the camera, hate the camera worked well, didn't. But we're going to drill down deeper on these details here in just a bit. And poor me Costaverdi, for the 3 reviews I have, ends up being a very net negative. You can kind of see the perception of performance throughout this entire piece. Down in the Z-Moto is actually kind of an emerging leader in this overall space. For the few people talking about Z-Moto, they like these devices. So they could actually start gaining mind share and market share with consumers based on what they're doing. Connectivity. Where do you put the data? I used to work for a touch company, and we visited a lot of different MP3 player manufacturers as ways to work with them to understand how we could help them and drive a better experience, better user experience for their interface. New buttons, gestures, all kinds of cool things. went through this entire presentation about, yes, you can search songs by drawing the alphabet on the front surface, all these kinds of things. I said, guys, this is amazing. Thank you. Really like what you can do for us. But here are the two conversations that we get most often on our customer service line. When people get a new MP3 player, take it home, and go, huh? How do I turn it on? Where do I put the music? So all this wonderful advanced stuff that we're trying to be able to do from a feature standpoint, we're lost on consumers because the most immediate gates couldn't be met. Video. How do I get the data off? How do I see what the camera is capturing? How do I connect it into the system? One of the most returned items at Best Buy today is a Wi-Fi router. Most of them work. It's because the user can figure out how to get it configured for their environment. Ease of use matters, usability matters. So connectivity ends up being a big barrier to a lot of these folks. I've got HD, 125 million megapixel camera. It's got 12 cores. I can't see a frame because they can't connect into it. The Wi-Fi doesn't work. They can't get the configuration. The Bluetooth doesn't pair. All these different pieces get in the way of what the consumers are trying to do with this. So all the cool things that we're working on as a community within the Alliance don't make it in if they can't make the connection. Installation is another big one. Fitbit. Does anybody here have a Fitbit? So Fitbit has done really well. When they first started, we were helping out Best Buy look at fitness devices. And their bubbles were very small and very low. Over time, they realized they had to fix a few things. We saw the data change as people figured out that Fitbit was really going to do cool things for them. And it grew and grew. Now they're the leader right now in wearables, at least until the Apple Watch comes out. That's another story for another time. Fitbit did not change the technology at all. The product stayed the same. What they changed was the experience of opening the box and setting it up. They took people on a different journey. And they went from people going, this is supposed to be cool, but I don't know what to do, to, oh, this is fantastic. It was so easy to set up. Here, let me tell you about that. And that drove their adoption. No changes in technology, no changes in product, just in the workflow you took consumers through to set it up. The same is true here. It should be no surprise that the highest rated installation is the SimpleCam. The name helps. If it was a complex cam, I don't think it would do so well. Or this requires a PhD to set up phone, right? That doesn't do so well in the marketplace. Within certain segments it does. And you can see along the way where that really becomes a big issue. The all-see security cameras, absolutely negative setup. Terrible. What about us driving them? One of the things we also do is we break it down within the camera details, connectivity, installation setup, also the quality, usability, resolution, the bundled app, focus, the ability to do night vision, things of that sort. What are they talking about? What's working? And we break it down either within the promoters. You all familiar with the Net Promoter Score methodology? Some of you may be. Kind of a marketing term. Comes out of a Harvard business case study created at Bain, and it's really bad math. But people like it. The marketers like it. So as an engineer, I have to, bite my tongue and do the math a different way. But effectively, the methodology makes a lot of sense. Who are the promoters, the people who give you 5 stars, that love what you do? Who are the detractors, the people who give you 1 to 3 stars and tell everyone what you've done wrong? Like my great Aunt Bertha. Oh, man. Or who are those that are in the middle, passively satisfied? 4 stars. Yeah. How's your Fitbit? Eh. How's your drop cam? Eh. Do you love it? Yeah. And so what we do in this analysis, we look at what things, so obviously the detractors end up having the most negative sentiment of things. But sometimes what you see are things that people who love the device still have things they hate. And people who hate the device still have things they love. So it's a great to understand what features are actually driving this overall experience. So we're part of what we can see in this case is that installation is even a problem for people that love their devices. And what is this? We need to work on this. So there's even connectivity is an issue as well. But we also see that there are people who hate the device, but actually think the camera's pretty good, who didn't mind the setup all the way down the line. So you end up with a weird balance as this comes into play. If we look at the usability piece, though, again, going back to the brand kind of conversations, where does this come into play? What cameras are easy to use? Of course, Simple Set comes at the top, because we've already preloaded that one. But even the ones that was hard to install with QC ends up having pretty neutral conversations about usability. Well, once I get it set up, once it's actually connected to the Wi-Fi, it's okay. Samsung ends up with pretty negative, actually, in the grand scheme of things. Same with Iris. Most people find the usability kind of a net negative with very few exceptions. It's a huge opportunity to improve that to help drive the adoption of the kind of technologies we're talking about today. Night vision. This turns out to be a key to LiDAR. The ability to use these devices in low light situations is something that makes them kind of go, oh, I can. We had earlier with the conversations about, is that a dog, is that a cat, is that a bear? Well, the bear's a little bit bigger. They snore a lot louder. But single soft actually becomes a target. People love this device, but they don't like the lack of or its performance in low light conditions. But Swan and Zimoto are off the charts. People love the Swan. They have this really active illuminator. Even Samsung, which is getting negative marks across multiple categories, is getting good marks in night vision. And so this actually creates an opportunity within space, even for those that may not have all the pieces correct. The ability to work in low light conditions across multiple usage scenarios becomes very, very important for these users. I think I may have. Image quality. People are expecting these devices to start having levels of image quality you're seeing on their devices. They want game films, right? If you've got a baby monitor in there, you want to see how high. You almost want to start capturing, screenshots to basically pass to your relatives. Oh, look, oh, it's so cute. Oh, I'm going to save this one for later. Who'd have thought, right? Most of us come from a security camera background where it's like, okay, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to avoid theft, right? Grainy image, I don't care. But we're seeing a lot of different uses come across here. And I apologize that the slide's not in here. I can try to bring it up in another way. But when you look at the way people talk about these devices, of course, home security is up there quite a lot. Baby monitoring is up there quite a bit. Cat monitoring is up there a lot. And in fact, there's actually specialized brands that have come out just for watching your pets. I mean, we have people talking about in these reviews, I love my drop cam. I can watch all my cats at home at the office. No lie. So at some level, hairball detection algorithms become actually an important opportunity within the space. They just had kittens. How do you know? There's now 12 of them instead of just one. Oh my gracious. The interesting part is that it's talked about, cats are talked about more than elder care. I don't know how much that's a marketing issue or technology issue, but it's an interesting statement about our society in general. But image quality matters in all those cases, right? Do you know which cat it is? Yeah, some people use these to actually figure out which of the 3 dogs they have peed in the kitchen. Because they've got the game films. You can go back and see. Oh, Fluffy. Where's that newspaper? Look, right here, I have evidence. If they can't get them at the time, you can show them game films later. And so image quality becomes more and more important in that conversation. As people start to have their expectations be shaped by the other imaging devices they're using on a regular basis for capture and reuse. Which is another challenge, because now you have storage, connectivity becomes important again. I had this weird waterfall effect of, I do this kind of ask what you have. Anyone here have a GoPro or the equivalent? Okay, how many of you have 12 terabytes of data you've never looked at? Yeah, what we end up with is a kind of what we, in the military we call this the collection problem. We spend billions of dollars putting these things up in the sky, we call them satellites, to look down in places, imagine the Hubble going the other way, and go, wow, this is, I need to get that here and do something with it. So we end up with a big backlog of data and no analysis and reporting on it. We have the same issue with a lot of this stuff. As people's excitement gets shaped about what they could do with this, the aspirations are there. I'm going to put these all around my home. What are you going to do with the data? I don't know. I'm going to preserve the opportunity. And so they start buying and talking about image quality. I don't want to see the graininess. I don't want to see the fuzziness. I want to see this in high def, high res. People are talking about 1080p. It's like they want to put it up, it's like, want to watch the Super Bowl or the cat videos from last week? Would you both? Picture in a picture? And the apps, of course, are starting to come in as well. the software, the applications that are being used to interface, control, exploit this is a big part of it as well. How much does it happen in real time? Like GE, or offline, or kind of active like Prism was talking about. Show me the day. All right, I'd love to figure out how many times the refrigerator door is open and which one of my daughters was doing that. All right, Anna, we've talked about this. No more standing in front of the refrigerator with the door open. But how do you know? I have the films. They're not teenagers yet, but this could be an interesting opportunity someday. Just forget the nanny cam, we need the daddy cam. All right. I have to wear this in my head? Yes, you do, everywhere you go. And so you start to see that the app, part of what helps ArcSoft and the SimpleCam is people like the application that comes with it. No negative commentary there at all. Whereas D-Link and even Samsung, there start to be real issues. Insteon, a stalwart in the space, is a great firm who's been around for a long time for professional installers. Right? They're probably older than X10. And some of you don't know when I'm talking about X10. That means I'm older than you. Haha. But as they move from having professional installers to DIY, they have to become consumerized. And realize actually there has to be an app for that. And that app has to be Angry Birds simple. Which a lot of these things aren't. It's a shift that we've seen in remote controls over the years where it became, I've got 12 different devices to control 3 things in front of me. Okay, which do I pick up? To the universal remote control, which meant now you had to give each one their orders. All right, TV, Blu-ray, receiver, cat video monitor, right? To now, the Logic Harmony allows you to do things around activities. What are you going to do? I want to watch a DVD. Boop, blah, it all comes on. These are kind of end up being stovepipes still for Insteon. And it shows up in the day we're like, oh, I wanted to love this device. It was great that I picked it up, but now I can't actually use the software. Even Zmodo, which we've talked about as being one of the emerging leaders, people talk a lot about their software. It's a positive thing for them. It starts to detract a little bit. For the most part, it's just too much red. There shouldn't be that much, especially as we talk about the ways to make things faster and easier to use in these devices. The other thing that comes up a lot, we saw a little bit with the example from GE and looking at hospital rooms, where do you put the cone of coverage? How do you put eyes in the back of their head? How do you do the 360? There's a couple different 360 things that are on the market, coming to the market, a lot more excitement around that. Then the question is, how do you start to exploit that? Then you put the Oculus Rift and you walk around. Then you're immersed in your 3D cat videos. That's where resolution really becomes important. But field of view really becomes something that's important for a security standpoint, because most people don't realize once they screwed it into the wall, oh, that's the wrong spot. But that's where that painting used to hang. Yes. And so the broader field of view makes it a lot more consumer-proof, a lot more experience insurance against a bad installation. So that's another thing to consider in the midst of that as well. Focus is always a good thing to focus on. I have really bad focus. Squirrel! And some of these cameras do as well. iHealth security cameras end up being some of the most negative. ArcSoft and others. This is less and less of an issue as the focus algorithms and optics get better and better. But still, some of them, FOSCam, DogCam, D-Link, even Falcon's not doing so well on all this, and this is part of the reason for that. What can they do differently? How can they leverage what the community's been doing around crisp, post-processing, real-time, better silicon, the whole stack that we all talk about in these meetings, actually drive towards a better experience for the consumers? And that's sort of the last little piece. I can go deeper, I can go sideways, I can tell you what we're seeing across within, people talk about IoT and camera versus vision and how it differs, whether they're talking about home automation or Internet of Things. In fact, we hear more about cameras and home automation and more about vision and Internet of Things. And of course, within the track we're doing for the Alliance, it's mostly about vision. But are there questions?